Good afternoon, everyone. Hello again. Welcome to everyone who is sitting here, and also a heartfelt welcome to everyone who is watching us online. First of all, there is a mistake behind me on this huge wall. Is there anyone who could spot it? There is an L missing somewhere in the text. Especially, it's the second line. It's Pre-Colonial. Because our expert knows a lot about this topic, he especially has a passion for researching the socio-cultural aspects of ecosystem services and biocultural identity in the Yoruba nation, southwest Nigeria. And he has a lot more to tell about because he's an expert in the field, and I'm very proud to present him on this stage. Please welcome Joós Adedeji.
Thank you for your very nice and kind introduction. All protocols duly observed. I welcome you to this presentation. To save time, but before I go on to the presentation, I tell you something about somebody. There was a man, we call him, the man was an architect, and he was one of the greatest architects of the 20th century. One day he was discussing with his friend, and he was very proud of himself. And he said, "Do you know I'm very religious?" And the friend said, "Wow, you are religious. Frankly, right? Are you sure you are religious?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Where is your church?" And he said, "No, I put N, capital N on nature, and I go there." And that is the summary of what I'm talking about. Now, I'm talking about hunters as city founders, landscapes of hunting, pre-colonial urban spaces, and cityscapes. Now, when we talk about the city, many of us, we don't appreciate many things that we enjoy. And so our ideas of the city in our everyday lives are often absent with considerations of its foundations. Even in our urbanities, with the city as their container, we use resources without any appreciation of their funding and funders in our conscious and subconscious faculties. Inadvertently, our cerebral hippocampus in the temporal lobe do not often think of the communication systems and associated gadgets, the aircraft, the outwears that we use, the fabrics, the cooking equipments in the kitchen, and lots more. For the city of yesterday, the city of today, and the city of the future, this gathering gives us the opportunity to correct our collective errors. Because we just use the city, we never think, who are the city's founders? Who are the people that founded the city? And these collective errors will help us we can correct these errors today through this gathering. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to ask some very crucial questions. What is the city? Who are city founders? What are their roles in the past, today, and also in the cities of the future? As critical urban actors, what place should we accord them in our everyday urbanity as urbanites and as means of compensation for their exploits? The relevance of our discourses on cities and hunters in one with nature is not only germane, but proved to be highly significant in the view of the current global statistics on urbanism. And as it is now, 45% are the people that are not living in city. 55% are already living in the cities. And so, dwelling in the cities, we know that the population of people to dwell in the cities in the future, they are going to increase. And because of that, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs have projected that by 2050, the urban population is going to increase by 70%. In his analytical insight into this demography, Simon argues that the shift of human populations from rural to urban areas could add another 2.5 billion people, 2.5 billion people to cities across the globe, and 90% of that increase is expected to occur in Asia and Africa. Projections by the UN predict that just 3 countries we account for 35% of that astronomical growth. India, we had 416 million city dwellers. China, we had 255 million city dwellers. And Nigeria, we had 189 million dwellers. Now we move. Nature in the city and nature of cities. Park and Burgess insist that the city is something more than congeries of individual men and of social conveniences, street buildings, is something more than a mere constellation of institutions and administrative devices, courtrooms, hospitals, schools, police stations, and civil functionaries of all sorts. The city is rather a state of mind, a body of customs and traditions, and of the organized attitudes and sentiments that inhere in this custom and are transmitted with this tradition. The city is not, in other words, merely a physical mechanism and an artificial construction. It is involved in the vital processes of the people who compose it. It is a product of nature and particularly of human nature. In this, we sense the complementary symbiosis relationship between human and non-human nature in the city as clearly exhibited in urbanism. We differentiate between the city and its content as nature outside, and the city as people who are dwelling in the city as nature with the human intent inside of them. And so, Lewis Mumford, in The Culture of the Cities, he defined the city from another perspective. To Mumford, the city, as one finds it in history, is a point of maximum concentration for the power and culture of a community. It is the place where the diffuse race, beams fall into focus with gains in social effectiveness and significance. The city is the form and symbol of internationalization and civilization of multiples and manifolds of people now and also in the future. And the city is a geographic plexus, an economic organization, an institutional process, a theater of social action, and an aesthetic symbol of collective unity. For us today, gathering here, talking about the city, about urbanism and urbanities, our oneness with nature in the city could be captured as follows. According to some authors, being one with nature can refer to a particular kind of experience, a specific set of behaviors, a certain type of relationship with other beings, or a particular role within eco-social system. In fact, an individual can be one with nature in the following terrains. In behavior, we could be one with nature. In our experiences, in our cultural lifestyles, and also in our system. And to be one with nature, it is possible today as we are all gathered in this One with Nature program, and we are trying and making efforts to really ensure that the global world lives as one with nature. It is not enough to have only a phenomenological experience of unity with the natural world. We must exhibit it, we must practicalize it. These definitions clearly portray the city as a complex dwelling machine with many interwoven parts, mechanisms, frictions, operations, functions, actors, and dynamics. The city is synchronously a physical and metaphysical entity, a combination of processes and products, actions and actors, coding and decoding, and indeed a genre of all possibilities. The complexity of the city make it amenable to too numerous and sometimes conflicting definitions, criteria, perspectives, agenda, concepts, mode of inquiry. The city has been defined in many ways through demography, infrastructure, administration, politics, culture, economy, society, history, power, geography, and also multiple ideologies, some of which have toxic layers in our history. It is a document of civilization and its historical realities. Our goal here today is to redefine the city from the perspective of its temporality and materiality based on its foundation and the founders. Scientific and historical accounts are replete that the city, the first city in the world, was created about 10,000 years ago. All humans were hunter-gatherers, moving from one place to another. And in history, the scientific exploration revealed that the first cities in the world were founded in Mesopotamia around 7,500 BC and include Erud, Uruk, and Ur. In Europe, Kadesh was the first city and was founded in 1140 BC. The description of Kadesh by Michael A. Peters in 2014 presents a nuanced understanding of city as the creation of hunters. How did he describe the city of Kadesh? A city, Kadesh, is an ancient language built on the Phoenician alphabet without vowels, consonants that catch the early evening sun falling on its ruin, a broken Doric column, the old words that form the discourse of the city. The streets are verbs carrying all kinds of human traffic. Well-worn animal and hunting tracks became walkways, then streets as old as the first Neolithic paintings of the hunt. They are restyled with every conquest and resettlement and permit, commerce, and conjugations of trade, market days, loan days, traders, Romani flowers, sellers, the city street musicians, the vendors, lovers, prostitutes. That is the city. These streets are also the military axial routes that control and police the inner city. Like master sentences, they carry collective wisdom of conversation leading to the historical central with arcades and islams, plazas, and public gardens. In this view of the city, it is fascinating and plausible for us gathered here today to admit and hypothesize that the whole geographical space of the world are hunting and fishing sites at one point or time in history. Our conversation deals with the actors of urban foundations, globalization, modernization, and westernization through colonial hegemonies have no capacity to act as erasers to the reality of ingenuity of the actions of hunters as city finders. The novelty, the winsomeness, and the magnitude, and the timelines of One with Nature, World of Hunting and Nature exhibition that we are celebrating now is an eloquent testimony, authentication against any doubter that Hungary has identified a great part of honor to place hunting, hunters, and nature in the correct scheme of priorities from time immemorial that can hardly be equaled, but clearly unsurpassable world over. This is clearly built on the glamour of the highly successful and world-renowned National Hunting Exhibition of 1871 and the 1971 World Expo for Hungarians. It is needless rhetoric to repeat, to emphasize that hunters are key actors in their urbanity. The literature is replete with the historical legendary and trajectories of the Hungarian nationhood and the cities of today that founders with Almos that lived between 820 CE and 894 as the first head of the loose federation of the Hungarian tribes from around 850 century. He was succeeded by his son, Prince Arpad, who established the Arpad dynasty between 850 and 1301. And it was under him that the Hungarian nation was transformed into a powerful state of East Central Europe in this Carpathian Basin. And today, we are rejoicing on what they have founded as city founders. It is very clear that this program, One with Nature, was spearheaded by highly efficient office of people who recognize hunters not just as mere actors, but also as important city founders. With this background, I go from where you know to where you don't know. Now, I talk about the Yoruba landscapes of hunting and also the Yoruba cities. African cities were founded based on different landscape characters, which were city-generating factors. Prominent among these are non-man-made, including topographical, hydrological, geological, ecological, flora, and fauna landscapes. The man-made city-generating factors include all means of transportation, economic and socio-economic opportunities, hills, rocks, slopes, and valleys. They are common topographical landscapes that enhance city founding in Yoruba nation. Streams, rivers, lakes, lagoons, oceans, seas are central to the formation of some of the cities. All these landscapes were culturally explored by highly significant actors to found these cities. Specifically, fauna and hydrological landscapes are landscapes of hunting and fishing, respectively. In the Yoruba nation of Nigeria, in British West Africa, many cities are critical examples. According to the great American anthropologist William Rosell Bascom, he said, in 1955, the Yoruba of Western Nigeria have large, dense, permanent settlements based upon farming rather than upon industrialization, the pattern of which is traditional rather than an outgrowth of acculturation. They are undoubtedly the most urban of all African peoples, the percentage living in large communities being comparable to that in European nations. This urbanism predates European colonial influence. The Yoruba people, they are descendants of Odudua, the Yoruba progenitor, who was the founder and the first king at Ile-Ife, termed the source in Yoruba cosmology and traditional theology. I'm going to illustrate this with 3 cases. Now, I talk about 3 cities from Nigeria, from the Yoruba part of Nigeria, a medium-sized city, then a large city, then a mega city. The first one, Oshogbo. Oshogbo, former hunting landscape. It might interest you to see on the map the green area that was the hunting landscape where the founder of the city first got to. And today, Oshogbo is not just an hunting landscape, it is a big city that has been inscribed on the world map by the UNESCO. The description of Yoruba cities as pre-colonial biocultural urban landscapes in Nigeria may not be more exemplified elsewhere than in Oshogbo, which is a medium-sized city. The presence of the popular, pristine, natural, and sociocultural landscape of Oshun Sacred Grove UNESCO World Heritage Site at the urban core of Oshogbo accounts for its archetypal status. The grove was inscribed in 2005, and it is one of the only two in Nigeria. To date, it globally represents the visionary and cosmological system of the Yoruba nation. The grove was a former landscape of hunting that transformed into a modern city. To date, the grove is a primary forest, and in finding out the foundation of the city, we interacted inside that grove with one of the staff of UNESCO, who was the chief education officer of the site. And this was part of our response. You are welcome to Oshogbo Sacred Grove. The grove was founded about 600 years ago. It was founded by a renowned elephant hunter, Oguntimehin. Oguntimehin came from Ipoleomu. Ipoleomu was very close here in Osun State. But at that Ipoleomu, they had problem of water. The place was surrounded with hills and rock. So when the hunter now got to this place, he found water. He did what he could do with water. He went back to go and tell the king at Ipoleomu that he has found water in some places. He advised the king for them to migrate from Ipole because of the water, and the king agreed, and they moved down here. So when they got here, they were clearing the bushes for them to really have space to settle, and mistakenly, in the process of tree falling into the water, a strange voice came out telling them that they've broken all our tie and dye pots. Like, this story is already on the world map, that this city was founded by an hunter, and it has been globalized to the extent that it's already inscribed on the world map. And in the process of the globalization of the city and of the grove itself, there was a woman, an Austrian woman, as the education officer told the story. Like I said earlier, this place was founded about 600 years ago. The carving were made with clay and red cement number, and it was Adoni Olorisha Susan Wenger, who was an Austria beside us here, and she came in her early 30s. When she came with her husband, Ulibaya, she came to Ede, another place, got the news of Oshun from Ede, and she came. Then she got attracted to Oshun, and she did not go back again. She divorced her husband, Ulibaya. That one went back to Austria, and then Susan Wenger married an Oshun man, and she indigenized. She went into the Oshun court and became an environmental activist that led into the inscription of the grove on the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The first settlement of the city in the grove was founded in 1801. By 1911, the population had increased to 60,821. Continuous urbanization increased the population to 649,600 by 2015, with attendant landscape changes, which you can see here. Even that's the hunter there. That's the inscription of the hunter and the elephant that he killed inside the groove, and how he has been immortalized. And you can see the fish in the landscape as a symbol of that goddess, that goddess spirit that is being worshipped over there. Then this is a landscape model of the city, how the city grew from the groove to become a global city, going through different monarchical periods as shown there. Then I talk about another city, Ibadan. That is the former hunting forest and also former capital of southwest region of Nigeria. Ibadan is the largest traditional urban center in sub-Saharan Africa and epitomizes the zenith of pre-colonial urban development in Nigeria. The first television station in Africa was established in Ibadan in 1959, called Western Nigerian Television. The 25-story 105 meters cocoa house was built in Ibadan and completed in 1965, was the first skyscraper in Africa and the tallest for so many years. And also, Ibadan emerged in 3 successions, and today, Ibadan is not just a city, it is a mega city. By 1840, it had grown so much that it dominated the military, political, economic landscape of the Yoruba nation. The political system was well suited to the evolving military expansion, dominated by frontline warriors and hunters, as the population of Ibadan was already 60,000 by 1851. As the urbanization process continued, by 1890, the city was walled with a population of at least 120,000 people within the wall. This was a transition landscape. And in Ibadan as well, there is a man that is still living there that told us the story, how the city was founded by this great hunter called Lagelu in the year 1875, but he was already in the forest there as an hunter by 1829. So I moved to Lagos. So you see the nature of Ibadan city and nature in Ibadan city in this slide. Then I moved to Lagos. Lagos was founded by fishers, the Awori, in the Atlantic coast at the pre-colonial era of the slave trade. In the very peculiar contrasting systems of landscape and oceanscape on which these forces acted, the city of Lagos was born in the year 1472. The Portuguese traders, they came to the settlement and named it Oko, Onim, and Lagos, meaning lakes. And today, Lagos is not just a city, it is a country of its own with a population of over 21 million, just within a very small landmass. In between these periods, between 1978 and 1608, Lagos became the most popular slave port of the West African slave coast. The slave port of Lagos became globalized as the Portuguese, American, French, and Cuban slave ships were common operators at the port. In between these periods, in 1600, the contrasting urbanism of Lagos was made manifest in the internal migration that occurred. And today, Lagos is not, it has still retained that character. You can see on the slide, the Makoko fishing village is a 200-year-old fishing village in Nigeria and in Lagos that is still existing now. And we can see the landscape of the city as clearly shown. By 1886, the population of Lagos had increased to 25,083 and was already 41,850 by 1901. As we speak now, fishing is still a major occupation in this Makoko village and in other parts of Lagos. To conclude my presentation, these narratives are clear indications that hunters played significant founding role in Yoruba urbanism. These were surrounded with metaphysical practices inscribed on the cityscapes in significant symbolic terms. Their urbanities were not only pre-colonial, but founded on cultural lifestyles that exist to date. Ethno-medicinal herbal practices, worship of deities, landscape signification, hunting festivals, artistically novel hunters music, they call it Jala Ode, and traditional cross system define the urbanity. Hunting continues to be interlaced with cultural practices, urbanity, and Yoruba cosmology, where hunters remain key actors. And in conservation contribute to the socio-cultural capital, economic sustainability, and urban security architecture. To this end, traditional conservation strategies like methodological approaches and legal framework should be strictly enforced to ensure sustainable conservation of the landscape. In the process of exploring the tourism potentials of the sites, the negative ecological impacts of tourism activities should be minimized despite the economic, political, social, and cultural gains. To achieve this best nature conservation result, there must be the promulgation and implementation of the legal framework of hunting in cultural landscape. In this way, the methodological strategies can be incorporated into the legal framework, through which strengths of the two are enhanced and their inherent weaknesses neutralized. This can be achieved by embarking on stepwise review of the law through the setting up of committees, including members of the local communities, and calling for memoranda. On the whole, there is the need to devise these strategies for reconnecting with these fallow systems in highly westernizing urban Africa. These include re-sacralization of desacralized landscapes of hunting, revival of cultural ideologies, and decolonization and redefinition of urbanism in African perspective. Despite globalization, it is inspiring that Hungary has showcased highly valuable indigenous modern urbanism in every sense of our urbanity. Thank you for listening.